I never thought shame could arrive dressed in candlelight and champagne. The wedding was everything a Chicago suburb could dream up. White roses spilling over every table, chandeliers casting golden flecks across the polished hardwood, and a string quartet humming softly in the corner like they'd been plucked from a movie set. The Grand Willow venue was the kind of place that made you feel like you'd stepped into someone else's life, someone richer, someone who belonged. And there I was, Emma, 35 years old, sitting at table 9 near the kitchen doors, trying to blend into the shimmer of it all. My son, Noah, sat beside me, his legs swinging under the table, his second-hand suit a little too big at the shoulders, but sharp enough to make him beam. I'd spent weeks scouring thrift stores in Rogers Park to find it, stretching my budget from 2 paychecks, one from my day job as a nurse's aide, the other from my night shifts at the bookstore. Noah didn't care that the suit was pre-loved or that I'd hemmed it myself with a sewing kit older than he was. To him, this was a big day, a chance to see his Aunt Claire become a princess, as he'd whispered to me in the car on the way. Here. His dark curls bounced as he craned his neck to watch the guests, his eyes wide with the kind of wonder only a 9-year-old can muster. I wanted to protect that wonder. I wanted to believe this day might make us feel like part of the family again. Claire, my younger sister, floated through the room like she'd been born for it. At 29, she was a marketing executive with a smile that could sell anything: cars, condos, or the idea that she was perfect. She always had that energy, the kind that drew people in, made them lean closer, laugh louder. Her wedding dress shimmered under the lights, a cascade of silk and lace that probably cost more than my rent for a year. She was beautiful, always had been, with our mother's high cheekbones and a charm I could never quite match. Growing up, Claire got the compliments. I got the comparisons. She got the spotlight. I learned to live in the shadows. Still, I showed up. I smiled when the photographer snapped candids. I clapped when Claire and Ethan, her polished lawyer fiancé, kissed under an arch of flowers. I wore the only formal dress I owned, a navy blue sheath I'd bought on clearance for a work event 3 years ago. It was simple, maybe too simple for a place like this, but I'd done my own hair in the bathroom mirror that morning, twisting it into a low bun while Noah practiced tying his tie in front of me. "You look fancy, Mom," he'd said, grinning. That was enough to get me through the door. The invitation had arrived 4 months ago, tucked into a cream envelope with gold calligraphy. My name was misspelled, Emma, 1M, and I wasn't in the bridal party, but I'd said yes anyway. Maybe it was foolish, but I'd hoped this wedding was a quiet olive branch, a chance to mend the fractures that had grown between me and my family since Noah was born. My mother, Diane, had made it clear years ago that I was the family's failure, the one who'd ruined the family name by getting pregnant at 25 with a man who vanished by the time I was showing. Claire, 5 years younger, was her pride, her second chance, her golden child. If Claire sneezed, Diane would hand her a monogrammed handkerchief. If I got sick, she'd tell me to stop being dramatic and take a vitamin. When Noah came into my life, everything changed. His father, Jake, had been a fleeting dream, charming, full of promises, gone by the 5th month of my pregnancy. No note, no call, just an empty apartment and a stack of bills. My family didn't ask questions. They didn't offer help. They gave me silence, judgment, and the occasional, "I told you so." But when I held Noah for the first time, his tiny fingers curling around mine, their words became white noise. He was my world, my reason, my superhero cape. We lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment on the edge of Evanston, nothing fancy, but it was ours. I made pancakes on Saturdays, sewed patches into his jeans, and stayed up late helping him with multiplication tables. He called me his hero, and that was enough to keep me going. Still, deep down, I wanted my family to see me, not just as a single mom, but as someone worth loving. That hope, fragile as it was, had brought me here, to this glittering wedding, to table 9 by the restrooms. Noah was enchanted by it all. He thought the chandelier looked like a spaceship. He whispered that Claire looked like a princess. And when I saw how happy he was, I decided to stay through the reception, even though the ache of not belonging was already settling in my chest. The salads came out first, delicate plates of arugula, and goat cheese that probably cost more per leaf than my hourly wage. I helped Noah cut his chicken when the main course arrived, wiping chocolate mousse off his tie when he got a little too excited about dessert. I avoided eye contact with Diane, who was seated at the head table with Claire and Ethan, her perfectly styled hair catching the light as she laughed with guests I didn't recognize. I overheard my name in whispers across clinking glasses, but I told myself to ignore it. I was here for Noah, for the hope of something better. Then the speeches started, and I realized this night wasn't going to be about family unity or forgiveness. It was going to be another stage for Claire to shine, and I was about to become her punchline. The speeches began the way they always do at weddings, warm, sugary, just a touch too rehearsed. The best man, a friend of Ethan's named Ryan, went first, cracking mild jokes about Ethan's law school days and getting a polite chuckle from the crowd. Then it was Claire's turn. She stood with perfect posture, her champagne flute catching the light, her dress sparkling like it was woven from starlight. The room hushed instantly, every eye on her. Noah leaned forward, his elbows on the table, completely captivated. "Thank you all for being here," Claire began, her voice smooth and radiant. "This is the happiest day of my life, and it means everything to share it with the people who matter most." I watched from the back, trying to convince myself I was included in that sentence. Noah's legs kicked under the table, his smile wide. I relaxed a little, sipping my water, hoping this would be one of those sentimental speeches about love and family. Then Claire's tone shifted, her smile turning sly. "And of course, I want to give a special shout-out to my big sister Emma." The spotlight swiveled and I felt eyes turning toward me. I sat up straighter, smoothing my dress, offering a polite smile. Noah looked up at me, excited, like he thought something wonderful was coming. For a moment, I believed it too. "Emma's always been such a strong example," Claire continued, her voice light but sharp, like a knife wrapped in velvet. "She's the bravest woman I know. Raising a child all on her own, no husband, no partner, just her. And, well, whoever's kind enough to babysit." The room chuckled, a ripple of amusement that felt like a slap. My stomach tightened, but I kept my smile frozen, hoping that was the end of it. "But seriously," Claire added, her eyes glinting as she raised her glass higher, "it's incredible how she's managed. A single mom, unwanted by anyone, but still showing up." The laughter came louder this time, unfiltered, slicing through the air. My cheeks burned, my hands froze around the napkin in my lap, twisting it until my knuckles ached. I glanced at Noah. His smile was gone, his eyebrows furrowed as he looked around, trying to understand why people were laughing at his mom. Then came the worst part. Diane, seated at the head table, laughed louder than anyone. She leaned toward the woman next to her and said, just loud enough to carry across the room, "She's a used product, but she still polishes up nice for her age." Another wave of laughter, sharper, crueler, the kind that didn't bother hiding its edge. My vision blurred for a second like the room was tilting. It wasn't just words, it was the weight of years, of every holiday dinner where I was the cautionary tale, every family gathering where I was the shadow. Noah leaned into me, his voice a whisper. "Why did she say that, Mom? What does she mean?" His eyes were wide, confused, searching for an answer I didn't have. I wanted to tell him it was okay, that it was just a joke, but my throat was dry, my heart pounding so loud it drowned out the clinking glasses. I looked around the room, desperate for someone to meet my eyes, to offer a shred of compassion. My grandmother, Ellen, stared at her plate, her fork still. My cousin Sarah smirked at her phone. Even Uncle David, who once told me I had my father's stubborn streak, kept his gaze on his wine glass. They all saw me, but no one saw me. I could have taken it if it were just me. I'd spent years swallowing their judgment, smiling through their backhanded comments, pretending it didn't hurt. But seeing Noah's confusion, his small face trying to make sense of why his mother, the woman who bandaged his scraped knees, who read him Harry Potter until her voice gave out, was being mocked by her own family, that broke something in me. I couldn't shield him from this. I couldn't make it make sense. My hands trembled as I pushed my chair back, ready to take Noah's hand and leave. I'd walk out with my head high, like I'd done so many times before. I'd survive this too. But before I could stand, I heard another chair scrape against the floor. The sound was sharp, deliberate, cutting through the lingering laughter. Ethan the groom stood up at the head table. His face was pale, his jaw tight. He reached for the microphone in Claire's hand, taking it without a word. The room went silent, like the air had been sucked out of it. Claire froze, her smile faltering. Diane's eyes narrowed. Noah looked up at me, his hand still in mine. Ethan didn't look at Claire. He didn't look at the guests. His eyes found me. And for a moment, I thought he might say something to smooth it over, to laugh it off, to keep the fairy tale intact. That's what my family always did. Brushed it under the rug, called it humor, called it tradition. But Ethan's face wasn't soft or charming. It was hard, like he was holding something back, something that had been simmering all night. Sorry, Emma, he said, his voice low and steady through the microphone. Don't go. The room held its breath. Whispers rustled like dry leaves. Claire's hand twitched, like she wanted to take the microphone back. Diane leaned forward, her lips parting as if to speak, but Ethan raised a hand, and the DJ, who'd been reaching for the volume controls, stopped cold. I can't. Pretend I'm okay with what just happened, Ethan said, his voice calm but unyielding. I won't stand here and let that kind of cruelty pass as comedy. My heart stopped. Noah squeezed my hand, his eyes wide. I didn't move, didn't breathe, didn't know what was coming next. But I knew one thing. Whatever Ethan was about, to say it wasn't part of Claire's perfect script. Ethan stood there, the microphone in his hand, his eyes still locked on me. The Grand Willow venue, with its glittering chandeliers and white roses, seemed to shrink around him. The laughter that had cut through me moments ago was gone, replaced by a stillness so heavy it felt like the room was holding its breath. Claire, my sister, stood frozen at the head table, her champagne flute still raised, her perfect smile cracked like thin ice. My mother, Diane, sat rigid, her lips pressed into a line, her eyes darting between Ethan and me. Noah, my 9-year-old son, clung to my hand under the table, his small fingers warm against my trembling ones. I wanted to leave, to take him and slip out the side door before anyone could say another word. But Ethan's voice, low, firm, deliberate, kept me rooted to the spot. I've heard a lot about family this past year, Ethan said, stepping out from behind the head table. His polished black shoes clicked against the hardwood floor, each step measured, like he was walking through a minefield. About tradition, loyalty, appearances. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. The guests shifted in their seats, some glancing at Diane, others staring at their plates, their wine glasses, anywhere but at me. But what I just saw wasn't family. That was cruelty dressed up as a celebration. A gasp rippled through the room, soft but sharp, like a pin dropping in a church. Claire's hand lowered, the champagne flute clinking against the table as she set it down. Her face was pale, her eyes wide, like she couldn't believe Ethan was doing this. I couldn't either. I'd met him only a handful of times. Dinners, at Diane's house, a barbecue last summer where he'd been polite but distant. He was a lawyer, successful, reserved, the kind of man who seemed to belong in Claire's world of designer dresses and 5-star vacations. I'd assumed he was, like her, someone who saw me as the family's cautionary tale, the single mom who didn't fit. But now standing there, his jaw tight, his voice steady, he was tearing that assumption apart. He turned to Claire, his expression unreadable but heavy, like disappointment mixed with something deeper, something raw. You mocked your sister for being a single mother, he said, his voice cutting through the silence, for raising a child without help. You laughed, and worse, you made her son watch it happen. He glanced at Noah, who was looking up at me, his brown eyes confused, searching for answers I didn't have. Emma didn't ask to be in that position, but she did it. She showed up today. She sat at the back, smiled, brought her son to witness your day, and you turned that into a joke. Claire opened her mouth, a small sound escaping, but nothing coherent came out. Her hands fluttered to her dress, smoothing the silk as if it could steady her. I'd never seen her look small before, not like this. She was always the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, who could charm a room with a single smile. But now, under Ethan's gaze, she seemed to shrink, her radiance dimmed. Ethan turned back to the guests, his eyes sweeping the room. Emma didn't stand up here to defend herself. She didn't ask for sympathy. She's never needed a stage. His voice softened for a moment, then hardened again. But I won't stay silent. If I'm about to marry into a family that sees cruelty as humor and shame as tradition, then I need to reconsider what kind of man I want to be. The room erupted into whispers, a low buzz like bees startled from a hive. A woman at the next table muttered, "Is this real?" A fork clattered against a plate. My cousin Sarah, who'd been smirking at her phone earlier, now stared at Ethan, her mouth slightly open. Diane stood abruptly, her chair screeching across the floor. "Ethan, that's enough," she snapped, her voice sharp but unsteady. "You're embarrassing Claire in front of everyone. Typical, just like her sister, always making a scene." But her words didn't land like they usually did. The power she'd always held, the ability to silence a room with a single look, was gone. The guests didn't nod in agreement or laugh along. Some looked uncomfortable, others angry. But not at Ethan, at her, at Claire, at the scene they'd all been complicit in just minutes ago. Ethan didn't acknowledge Diane. He set the microphone down on the table with a soft thud, his eyes finding mine one last time. Then he walked past Claire, past the head table, past the stunned guests, and straight toward the double doors at the back of the room. The string quartet faltered, a violin note wobbling before going silent. The DJ stood frozen behind his booth. Ethan didn't look back. The doors swung shut behind him, and the fairy tale shattered. I stood there, Noah's hand still in mine, my heart pounding so loud I could barely hear the whispers around me. The air conditioning hummed, a spoon clinked against a glass, but no one clapped, no one cheered. Claire was still standing, her hands gripping the edge of the table, her eyes darting around like she was waiting for someone to fix this. Diane sank back into her chair, her face flushed, muttering something to the woman next to her, who didn't respond. The guests were a mix of shock and embarrassment, some looking at me, others pretending I wasn't there. Noah tugged at my sleeve. "Mom, are we leaving?" His voice was small, uncertain, but it pulled me back to myself. I looked down at him, his curls messy from where he'd been leaning against me, his suit jacket wrinkled. His eyes weren't sparkling anymore, but they were steady, trusting me to know what to do next. "Yes, baby," I said, brushing his hair back with my free hand. "We're going home." I stood taller, smoothing my dress, and took a step toward the exit. The crowd parted as I passed, a silent wave of bodies moving aside. Some avoided my eyes, their gazes fixed on their plates or their phones. Others looked like they wanted to say something, their mouths opening and closing like fish out of water. I didn't stop. I didn't look at Claire or Diane. I didn't need to. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like shrinking under their stares. Halfway to the door, I heard a voice. "Emma." It was soft, shaky, almost lost in the hum of the room. I turned. My grandmother, Ellen, was standing, her hands clutching the back of her chair for support. Her eyes were rimmed red, her face pale. She took a step toward me, her cane tapping the floor. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I should have said something. Years ago." I nodded, my throat tight. I didn't hate her for staying silent. I knew what silence cost some people. I'd paid that price myself, over and over. But I wasn't carrying their guilt anymore. I wasn't carrying anyone's. "It's okay, Grandma," I said, my voice steady. "I'm okay." She nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks, and sank back into her chair. Noah squeezed my hand, and we kept walking. The double doors loomed. Ahead, the same ones Ethan had disappeared through. I pushed them open, and the cool night air hit us like a wave, crisp and clean, washing away the weight of the room. The parking lot was quiet, the distant hum of Chicago traffic blending with the crickets in the gardens. Noah looked up at me, his face lit by the soft glow of the venue's exterior lights. "Is the wedding over?" he asked, his voice small, but curious. I smiled, a real smile, the kind I hadn't felt all night. "Yeah, buddy," I said. "I think it ended exactly how it needed to." We walked to our car, a beat-up Honda that had seen better days, its bumper held together with duct tape and hope. I buckled Noah into the back seat, his suit jacket now slung over his shoulder like a cape. He was quiet as we drove home. The radio off, just the hum of the tires and the rhythm of his fingers tapping the armrest. The city lights blurred past us, Chicago's skyline a distant promise on the horizon. I kept my eyes on the road, but my mind was still in that room, replaying Ethan's words, Claire's silence, Diane's faltering control. When we got home, our apartment was the same as always, small, cluttered, ours. The couch sagged in the middle. The kitchen table had a wobble I'd never fixed, but it was home. Noah kicked off his shoes, leaving them in a heap by the door, and I didn't have the energy to scold him. I tucked him into bed, his Spider-Man comforter pulled up to his chin and kissed his forehead. He didn't ask any more questions, just looked at me with those big, trusting eyes before closing them. I lingered by his door, watching his chest rise and fall, the weight of the night settling into my bones. The next morning, I woke to a buzzing phone, a dozen missed calls, unknown numbers, distant cousins, even a couple of guests I barely knew from the wedding. I ignored them all. Then a text came through from my friend Jess, who'd been at the reception, sitting at a table closer to the front. Someone recorded Ethan's speech. "It's on Facebook, 60,000 views already. You need to see the comments." I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the link. Part of me didn't want to relive it, to hear Claire's words or Diane's laughter again. But I clicked anyway. The video started with Claire's speech, her sly smile, the crowd's laughter, then Ethan standing tall, his voice cutting through the noise. And there I was, frozen in the frame, holding Noah's hand, my face a mix of shock and pain. The comments were a flood of support. "This man is a hero. She didn't deserve that. Every single mom out there just got some justice." I'm crying watching this. I didn't cry. I didn't smile either. I just felt still, like something that had been clenched inside me for years, decades maybe, had finally let go. I set the phone down and went to make coffee, the familiar, routine grounding me. Noah woke up soon after, padding into the kitchen in his pajamas asking for pancakes. I made them, the batter sizzling on the griddle, the smell filling our tiny apartment. He talked about the chandelier, how it looked like a spaceship, but he didn't mention Claire or Diane or the speech. I was grateful for that. Days passed and the story spread. Claire tried to spin it, posting on Instagram about misunderstandings and overreactions, claiming it was just a joke gone wrong. But the comments on her posts weren't kind, and the video of Ethan's speech kept circulating, shared by strangers, single moms, people who'd felt the sting of being laughed at when they should have been lifted up. No one was laughing at Claire anymore. A week later, a small bouquet of sunflowers arrived at our apartment, delivered by a local florist. No note, just a card with 2 words, "To Emma." I didn't need to ask who it was from. I set the flowers on the kitchen table, their bright yellow petals catching the morning light. Noah grinned when he saw them. "They're like you, Mom," he said. "Sunny." I didn't hear from Claire or Diane. I didn't expect to. The wedding didn't happen, at least not that day. Whispers from cousins told me Ethan and Claire had called it off quietly. No big announcement, just a slow unraveling of what was supposed to be perfect. Diane called once not to apologize, but to say I'd embarrassed the family by not laughing along, by letting Ethan make a scene. I listened for 30 seconds, then said, "I'm not your scapegoat anymore. I hung up, my hands steady, my voice calm. It wasn't dramatic. It was final. 6 months have passed since Claire's wedding that never was, and the world feels different now, like the air itself has shifted. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but in the quiet way a season changes. One day you notice the leaves are gone, and you realize you've been walking through autumn all along. I'm still Emma, 35, single mom to Noah, still hustling between my nurse's aide shifts at the hospital and my evening hours at the bookstore in Evanston. Our apartment hasn't changed either. Same sagging couch, same wobbly kitchen table, same faint smell of coffee and pancakes that lingers on Saturday mornings. But I carry myself differently now. I don't hunch under the weight of old shame. I don't hide in the back of rooms anymore. And Noah, he's changed too, in ways that make my heart ache and swell at the same time. The fallout from the wedding didn't fade as quickly as I thought it would. That video of Ethan's speech, the one Jess sent me the morning after, didn't just go viral. It became a moment. By the end of the first week, it had over 200,000 views on Facebook, shared across pages for single moms, women's empowerment groups, even a local Chicago news outlet that called it a wedding speech that broke the internet. The comments kept coming, hundreds of them, then thousands. Strangers wrote things like, "This is for every mom who's been made to feel less. Ethan's a king for this. Emma, you're a warrior." I read them late at night, after Noah was asleep, my phone screen glowing in the dark. I didn't cry, but I felt something loosen inside me, like a knot I'd been carrying since I was a teenager, always trying to prove I was enough. Claire tried to control the narrative at first. She posted a long Instagram caption about misunderstandings and family humor, saying people were too sensitive, that Ethan had overreacted. But the internet wasn't having it. Her comments section filled with people calling her out, quoting Ethan's words, asking why she thought humiliating her sister was funny. She deleted the post after 2 days and her social media went quiet. No more wedding photos, no more engagement ring selfies, no more curated glimpses of her perfect life. I heard from a cousin that Claire moved to a new apartment downtown, threw herself into work, and started telling people the wedding was postponed for personal reasons. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. Ethan and Claire's engagement ended quietly, like a fire that burned out before anyone noticed. No big announcement, no public drama, just a slow erasure of what was supposed to be their fairy tale. A mutual friend told Jess that Ethan had moved back to his old place in Lakeview, that he was focusing on his law practice, taking pro bono cases for single parents. I didn't reach out to him. What could I say? Thank you for seeing me. Thank you for breaking your own future to stand up for mine. It felt too big, too raw. But the sunflowers he sent, the ones with the card that said to Emma, still sit on my kitchen table, dried now, their petals brittle but still bright. Noah calls them Mom's trophy. Diane called once a week after the wedding. I was folding laundry, Noah playing with his Legos in the living room, when her name lit up. My phone. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Her voice was sharp, the way it always was when she was trying to rewrite history. "Emma, you embarrassed the family," she said. No greeting, no softness. "You could have laughed along, kept the peace. Instead, you let that boy make a spectacle. You always were selfish." I listened for exactly 30 seconds, my hands stilling on a pair of Noah's jeans. Then I said, "I'm not your scapegoat anymore, Mom." My voice was calm, steady, not angry. I hung up before she could respond. It wasn't a scream or a fight. It was clean, final, like closing a book I'd read too many times. I stood there for a moment, the phone warm in my hand, waiting for the guilt to hit. It didn't. For the first time, I didn't feel like I owed her an explanation, an apology, a piece of myself. Other family members reached out, some with half-hearted apologies, others with curiosity disguised as concern. My cousin Sarah sent a text. "Are you okay?" That was intense. Uncle David left a voicemail, his voice gruff. I should have said something that night. "I'm sorry, kid. I didn't respond to most of them, not out of anger, but because I didn't need their validation anymore. Grandma Ellen was the only one I called back." We talked for an hour, her voice shaky but warm, reminiscing about my dad who died when I was 10. "You've got his heart," she said. "He'd be proud of you." I cried then, quietly, after we hung up. But they were good tears, the kind that heal. Life didn't transform overnight. I still work long hours, my feet aching after 12-hour shifts at the hospital, my eyes heavy from shelving books until midnight. I still make 2 dinners some nights because Noah wants pancakes and I crave something green. But the rhythm of our days feels lighter now. Noah and I have our routines. Saturday mornings at the library, where he picks out graphic novels and I sneak read poetry. Evenings on the couch watching Spider-Man reruns, his head on my shoulder. He started asking bigger questions, the kind that catch me off guard. "Why are some people mean, Mom?" he asked one night while we were brushing our teeth. His toothbrush paused mid-scrub. "And why are some people brave?" I looked at him in the bathroom mirror, toothpaste on his chin. His eyes so much like mine but brighter, unburdened. "Some people are mean because they're scared," I said. "Scared of looking small, so they make others feel that way. And the brave ones, they're the ones who see that and say, 'No, not today.'" He nodded, like it made perfect sense, and went back to brushing. But I saw it in him, the way he was processing what happened at the wedding, turning it into something he could carry. He talks about Ethan like he's a superhero, like Spider-Man or Iron Man. Sometimes I catch him giving speeches to his action figures, standing up for the little guy, his voice loud and clear. "You can't talk to him like that," he'll say, making Captain America face off against a plastic dinosaur. I watch him, and I know, deep in my bones, that he saw something that night that will shape the man he'll become. Strong, gentle, unafraid to speak when it counts. One evening, about 3 months after the wedding, Noah looked up from his homework and asked, "Mom, are you still sad about what Aunt Claire said?" I was stirring spaghetti sauce, the kitchen warm with the smell of garlic and tomatoes. I paused, the wooden spoon still in my hand. "Not anymore," I said. "Why?" He shrugged, his pencil tapping the table. "Because I think you won, even though it wasn't a fight." I laughed, a real laugh, the kind that starts in your chest and surprises you. "You're right, buddy," I said. "It wasn't a fight, but we came out okay, and we did. I didn't yell that night. I didn't insult Claire or Diane back. I didn't demand justice or cry in front of the guests. I just stood up, held Noah's hand, and walked away. And Ethan, someone I never expected, decided silence wasn't enough. His speech wasn't just about defending me. It was about showing everyone in that room what love really looks like. Not the kind that wears a tuxedo or walks down an aisle, but the kind that sees someone being hurt and says, "No, not today." The video kept circulating, popping up on my phone every few weeks as someone new shared it. A co-worker at the hospital mentioned it one day, not knowing I was the Emma in the story. "That speech gave me chills," she said, scrolling through her phone in the break room. "That guy's got guts." I just nodded, sipping my coffee, letting her think it was someone else's story. It didn't belong to me anymore. It belonged to everyone who'd ever felt small, who'd ever been laughed at when they should have been lifted up. I started noticing changes in myself, too. At work, I spoke up more. Small things like asking for a shift change when I needed it, or suggesting a new way to organize patient charts. At the bookstore, I stopped hiding in the stockroom during busy hours, instead helping customers with a confidence I didn't know I had. One night, a woman came in looking for a book for her daughter, a single mom like me. We talked for an hour, and when she left, she hugged me saying, "You're doing good, you know." I believed her. Noah's school had a parent-teacher conference last month, and his teacher, Ms. Carter, pulled me aside. "He's different this year," she said, smiling. "More confident, more willing to stand up for his friends." Did something happen? I thought of the wedding, of Noah's wide eyes, as Ethan spoke of the way he squeezed my hand as we left. "Yeah," I said. "He saw something important." Last week, I took Noah to the park near our apartment, the one with the creaky swings he loves. It was a crisp November afternoon. The kind where the air smells like leaves and possibility. He ran ahead, his sneakers kicking up dirt, and I sat on a bench watching him climb the slide. My phone buzzed, a notification from a local florist confirming a delivery I hadn't ordered. I frowned, thinking it was a mistake, but when I got home, another bouquet of sunflowers was waiting on the doorstep. No note, just a card. To the warrior. I smiled, tucking the card into my pocket. Noah saw the flowers and grinned. "More trophies, Mom?" "Yeah," I said, ruffling his hair. "More trophies." I didn't dance at my sister's wedding. I didn't toast or toss a bouquet or cry happy tears under fairy lights. But I left with something better than approval. My son beside me, my dignity intact, and the quiet certainty that I no longer need to explain myself to anyone. That was the ending no one expected, and exactly the one I deserved. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever been made to feel small in a room full of people who should have stood by you, know this: your voice matters, your dignity matters, and you are not alone. I don't know what's next for me and Noah, but I know we'll face it together with our heads high and our hearts full. And somewhere out there, someone reminded a room full of people, and maybe the whole internet, what it really means to be strong.